Hello everyone. Ellarigu namaskara. Welcome to the Pranasakhi community session. Udara nimittam bahukrita vesham. We are aware we take multiple roles and do multiple things to earn our basic need, that is food. We are very much aware we are what we eat. We know that our gut is our second brain. We know how gut health is important in overall well-being. But is it only that? Doesn't it matter beyond what we eat? How we eat, does it make a difference? And from where our food is coming, will it has any role to play? Is it produced responsibly? And how it is impacting on the environment and the other members of the universe or the community? Are we considering it? Or should we have to brush it off, telling that it's not my thing to worry, why should I be concerned? Perhaps we have a gentle reminder because we reap what we sow. So we cannot just ignore that part, right? Because what we eat, along with that, how we eat, from where the food comes, because it has a ripple effect outwards. When we eat something, it not only shapes our health, it also impacts on the health of environment, and it doesn't end there. Again, it comes back to us. To talk more about this, we have our fantastic speaker with us, Dr. Sharang, today. And to introduce him, I request Dr. Sandhya Ravi, founder and MD Prameya, senior breast surgeon, to introduce him and talk about the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Manasa. Welcome to everyone. A warm welcome to Dr. Sharang, and thank you very much, Dr. Sharang, for making time to speak to our community today. By the way,
My
Dr.
pleasure.
Sharang is from Mumbai. And just as Manasa said, we depend for every mouthful of food that we eat and for every lungful of air that we breathe on the planet. So this is not, it's spoken by Dr. David Attenborough. He's a very, very famous naturalist. Many of you would have seen a lot of his programs on Netflix and other shows. And what is more important is we are at that stage in our history where we are very, very aware of what is happening and we have the power to do something about it. So we know the problem, we know the solution. And the more we bring in this awareness and the more we are thoughtful about what we want to do is when we can achieve the results that we want to see. So today, I have great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Sharang Wartikar, who's an eye specialist. He's a very experienced and skilled vitreoretinal surgeon in Thane, Mumbai. So he lives in Mumbai. And over the years, he has been quite disturbed about the impact that lifestyle has been having on our health, especially with respect to diseases like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac diseases, stroke, etc. And also, when he noticed that modern science has shifted its focus from addressing the root cause to just managing the disease, is when he studied more about lifestyle medicine. And he also realized how intricately the diet is related not only to our own health, but also to the planetary health. And like all of us know, the larger picture is what we need to address. Yes, all of us can look at individual needs and how we can better our lives, but we also need to be aware how climate change is hitting us hard. And one of the biggest contributors is sitting right on our plate. And this is what he's going to speak to us about today. A little more about Dr. Sharan. He's been appointed as advisor for PAN India, which is also known as Physicians Association for Nutrition. He's the director of PAN Mumbai team. This PAN is a non-profit organization that strives to educate medical doctors about lifestyle medicine and nutrition. You may recall that one of our previous speakers, both our previous speakers on gut health, Dr. Narasimhaya and Dr. Pratima Kini are also from this organization. And because of our nice network, we are able to rope in these excellent people who are able to deliver talks to us on these topics. He's also an excellent speaker. He's been invited to deliver talks at various schools, medical colleges, and continuing medical education programs across India on nutrition, environment, and ethics. So, without further delay, I invite you, Dr. Sharan, to take over and talk to us today about this interesting topic.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'll share my screen. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible and I'm audible.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, have you ever wondered why humans have to be told what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat? Because everyone else in nature seems to be pretty sorted. I mean, they certainly don't need to attend such webinars that we are attending to understand what needs to be eaten, isn't it? Problem is, we are now eating for our convenience and pleasure, and no longer for our survival. And that's why we are suffering and dying, both from less as well as excess. So, today I'm going to talk to you about the right diet to not die yet, right? So, if you ask somebody what is the best diet for survival of an individual, let's say you try and Google it, right? You will get multiple answers. Somebody say, oh, keto, vegetarian, vegan, Mediterranean, blah, blah, blah. And everybody will say, okay, my diet is the best. I have this study, I have that study. So, how does it work? That's because studies are a lot like bikinis. You know why? Because they reveal a lot, but they hide the essentials. If you want to find the best diet for an individual, then you need to have that perfect nutrition study which has to meet a lot of stringent criteria with lots of fund and years of follow up required, which is basically almost impossible. So, then what do we do? How do we find the answer? So, why not think a little outside the box and twist the question a bit? So, instead of asking what's the best diet for the survival of an individual, suppose we ask which is the best diet for survival of our species. You'll say, what does that mean? Are humans an endangered species? Is it true? Well, what could possibly be threatening our species? So, in between, I'll be asking a few questions. Maybe those of who you are can just type in the chat box, and we will, get back to those answers a little later. So, if I ask you, what do you think is threatening our existence as humans? So, what are the possibilities? Well, one, of course, was pandemics, right? We were very much scared during COVID times and we didn't know what the future had in store for us. Luckily, we got through. What about wars? They're happening everywhere. We are just enough to kill each other. We don't need any external factors. What about lifestyle diseases, malnutrition, obesity? What about greenhouse gas emissions, climate change? There's land shortage, water shortage, food shortage, isn't it? We are also suffering from air pollution, water pollution, ocean damage, and deforestation and species loss. Isn't it? All these things are there that are threatening us. But what if I tell you that there is a common link between all these problems that you're facing? Can anybody guess what it could be? Well, it's our diet, right? It's a little hard to believe, probably. And that is because we are living in a matrix. I don't know if you people have watched the movie, but I'd like to share a small clip from that movie for you.
The Matrix. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? You have to see it for yourself. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So today, I'm offering you these choices. One is you take the blue pill, you switch off the webinar, and you stay ignorant and stay in your world as you are. Or if you stay and choose, then I'm going to show you the truth, right? So let's go for it. So 10,000 years ago, if you look at mankind, what were we? We were hunter gatherers, right? We used to survive on whatever we could find. Then we learned agriculture. And then what happened? From whatever we could find, Sorry, something. Whatever we could find, we were now able to survive on whatever we wished for. Right? Now, agriculture can either be plant agriculture, where humans grow specific crops for their direct consumption, or it could be animal agriculture, where humans grow specific animals for their direct or indirect consumption. Now, these animals are known as livestock animals, and from them we get meat, fish, eggs, and milk. Right? Now, again, going back 10,000 years ago, if you look at all the mammals on the planet, okay, let's keep the humans aside for now. If you look at all the other mammals on this planet, all the mammals were wild. There were no livestock mammals on the planet because humans were not having any animal agriculture at that time. So the ratio of wild to livestock was 100 is to 0, right? So today, if I ask you, what do you think the ratio would be? Obviously, we have more livestock animals now, but what about the wild animals? They would have reduced in proportion, right? What do you think? You could just type it out, could be the ratio of wild animals to livestock animals. And let me then tell me if anybody got close to this figure. The current situation is that only 6% of all mammals on this planet, excluding humans, are in the wild. 94% are livestock mammals. What about the birds? Well, even the birds haven't been spared. 71% are now chicken. So what's wrong in that? People will say, in nature also animals eat other animals. We are also doing the same, nothing different. Well, if you look at the natural food pyramid, all animals are naturally born. They live in the wild. The prey has a fair chance to escape. And if the prey numbers fall, the predators also start dying because they don't have food. As a result, there's a natural balance of population which is maintained. But in animal agriculture, the predator, that is us, is artificially growing its own prey. These are not naturally born animals. They are artificially inseminated and brought into this world. They are kept in captivity, so they don't have any chance of escaping. It's not a fair war out there, right? So there's no balance of population possible. Now, we always say there's so much of human population and everything has to do with it. Well, yes, there are more than 8 billion of us now on this planet. But every year, we kill more than 100 billion animals just on land. So, more than a human population problem, it's a humans eating animals population problem. And these animals are putting a tremendous strain on our resources. So, if you try to understand what is the impact of animal agriculture, you have to understand that just because these animals exist on our planet, they are going to occupy land. Now, if you look at the Earth's surface, 29% is land, of which 76% is habitable. And out of this, 45% is used by agriculture. And out of this agriculture land, 80% is used for animal agriculture. Only 16% is used for plant agriculture, right? That's like 27% of total land on this planet is consumed by the animals. In comparison, if you see all the human infrastructure that's been built, the cities, the towns, villages, roads, it constitutes only 1%. Imagine, see this. And the irony is, from so much of land, we are getting only 17% of the global calories from animal agriculture, while that 16% land is providing us with 83% of calories. See how the distribution is mismatched. And the agricultural land usage is only going on increasing. But for what? Not for human feed, but for animal feed and for the grazing of these animals. You see this image, which was depicting the land usage in the 1800. If you see the pink color, which is denoted for pasture, in this figure, you will not find any pink anywhere, hardly here and there, small spots. Now you move on to 214 and you see the image, what has happened. Let me show it to you again. This was 1800. This is 2014. See the amount of land which is now given away for pasture to feed these animals. And where does all this land come from? As I speak, the Amazon forest, the size of 3 football fields, okay, imagine, is getting cut every single minute right while we are sitting here. And why is that? 88% of that is to provide for animal needs. And deforestation causes biodiversity loss. Imagine the number of species that are living in those dense rainforests, how they are deprived of their habitats and they are dying. In fact, the number of endangered species is going up like anything right now. All these animals that we are so used to seeing in the next 20 to 40 years may all go extinct. Naturally, some species are bound to die. So that natural rate of species extinction is three species dying every year. Currently, three species are dying every hour. That is how bad it is. And when high number of species die in a short geological period of time, it is known as mass extinction. The Earth has survived five mass extinctions in the past. The last one was when the dinosaurs got wiped out. We are in fact headed towards the sixth mass extinction, entirely due to human activity. So, because these animals just exist, they are responsible for deforestation, species loss, and land shortage. Now, if they exist, you have to feed them. So, they are going to eat and drink. Humans consume a lot of water and food, but the animals consume 8 times more water and 6 times more food than what we take. When you talk of water, these have become a very common sight. This is, in fact, an image from Bangalore itself. This is what is happening during summers, isn't it? In fact, by 2050, 70% of the world's population will be living in water stressed areas. And every time we have, I mean, so much of water we have already taken out from the planet's crust. You won't believe it that the Earth's axis has tilted. That is how bad it is. And every time we are told, you have to take care of water, save water. And what are we suggested? Multiple things. Turn off the tap, don't shower for too long, use high efficiency toilets, don't use the pipe, use a bucket, and things like that. All good things, all good tips that can save like nearly 1,000 liters per day, which is amazing, isn't it? But you eat one hamburger and you have consumed 2,400 liters of water, which is equivalent to flushing the toilet for 6 months or taking a shower for 2 months. What does this mean? So, for that, you have to understand what is water footprint. Water footprint of an object or a food or a thing is whatever water has been consumed in the production of that thing. And when you look at the distribution for an average person, the household activities, which is what we constantly focus on, constitute just 10 to 11% of our water footprint. Another 19 to 20% comes from the industrial goods that we are using. And a mammoth 70%. In Asia, it's more than 80% of our water footprint comes from the food that we eat. And if you compare the meat and dairy, the animal foods and the plant foods, you will see that the majority of the water goes in the production of animal foods. In fact, 1 kg of beef requires so much water that one person can drink that water for 15 years. Just 1 kg of beef. What about food? Every day, 1 billion people are sleeping hungry. 10,000 children are dying of starvation every day. And yet, 41% of the world's cereal harvest is being fed to farmed animals. We have enough food on the planet to eliminate hunger 3 times over, but we are just not giving it to the people. And when we eat meat, there is somebody who doesn't get to eat at all. Why? Because 82% of the world's starving children live in countries where food is fed to animals and the animals are exported for money. That is the irony. Now, when you have, say, 1 kg of beef, that can feed maybe one or two people, right? But to get that amount of beef, that animal would have consumed 16 to 20 kgs of grains over its lifetime. Instead of passing it through the animal, if those grains are directly fed to humans, 20 to 25 people can probably eat on it. So that's the inefficient distribution because of these middlemen, so called, that are coming in between. And it's just not for beef. It's true for all animal products across the variety. So because these animals eat and drink, we are facing water shortage and food shortage. Now, if they eat and drink, they are going to pee and they're going to poop, isn't it? And they create a lot of waste. How much? 130 times more waste than what humans produce with zero waste treatment facilities. What happens as a result? There is air and water pollution occurring around the areas. And there are multiple respiratory diseases and allergies found in farmers and even in people who are staying nearby. They are suffering from multiple diseases that are affecting them. 40,000 kgs of excrement is produced by the animals every second on this planet. You know how much that is? That is enough to cover entire Bengaluru in just 2.5 days. The question is, why don't we see all this? Because it's all being silently dumped into the oceans. And that is leading to what are known as dead zones, low oxygen areas which can no longer support marine life. And these dead zones are spreading across the coast like anything into the oceans. Right? Beautiful gardens of corals and sponges are now being reduced to lifeless plains. But why is the ocean so important? I mean, we don't stay there, we stay on land. How does it matter? Why don't we just keep dumping stuff there? Well, oceans produce 70% of the oxygen in the atmosphere and they absorb 1/4 of the carbon dioxide that we are producing. It's the phytoplanktons that are floating around in the ocean. They are responsible for this. The rainforest that we call the lungs of our planet is actually contributing less than 30%. It's the oceans that are giving us oxygen. Plus, they give life to many, many, many marine creatures. And of course, they help in mitigating the climate change because of the oceanic currents. And what are we doing? We are polluting the oceans. You know, this image is what is known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. In the Pacific Ocean, because of the currents, all the plastic that is being dumped is getting accumulated in certain patches. There are 5 such patches in the Pacific Ocean. This one is the largest of them. Do you know the size of this single patch? It is more than half the size of India. That's how big it is. And how do we plan to keep plastics out of the oceans? Well, no plastic bags, no plastic straws, no cups. All this we know, right? But what we don't know, or what we are not told, is that 80% of the plastic out there is fishing gear. This is known as ghost gear, the most deadly form of marine plastic debris, right? And microplastics, they are everywhere now. They are found inside our bodies, leading to multiple problems and multiple diseases. Seafood is one of the sources besides bottled water that is, responsible for having microplastics in our body. Every year, 3 trillion fish are killed. 3 trillion. Now, this is a huge number. Okay, that's like 3 followed by 12 zeros. The problem is that after a while, our mind stops processing these zeros. It doesn't matter whether it's 10 zeros, 12 zeros, 14 zeros, it looks all the same to us. So I want to pause here and I'm going to try and explain how big this number is. So suppose you start counting from 1 to 3 trillion. How much time do you think it will take? You can type in the chat box if you want. Roughly, what do you think would be the time that it will take to count from 1 to 3 trillion, right? And if anybody has come close to this number, we will see later. You will take 100,000 years. Okay. This itself is a huge number, difficult to comprehend. That's like 1,400 lifetimes. If all you do is sit and count since the time you're born till you die, you'll have to take rebirth so many times. You just count the number of fish we are killing every year. If you start walking, 3 trillion steps will take you how far? It will take you 50,000 times around the earth. You'll get bored. 3,000 trips you can make to the moon and back. Still, you'll get bored. 8 trips you can take to the sun and come back. Light takes 8 minutes to reach the earth from sun. That is how big this number is. And this is how the fishing is occurring in the oceans, right? These are huge trawlers which are dragged by huge ships. They're so tall, 3-story tall and as wide as football field. This is dragged across the ocean bed. And they take everything that comes in it, whether you want to consume those fish or not, whatever it is, it's just taken away and leaving nothing behind, just barren land which is left behind. Every year, these trawlers plow an area 6 times the size of India. Every year, it's being destroyed that way. No wonder 90% of the world's marine fish stocks are now overexploited. At this rate, we are going to have fishless oceans by 2048. And if the oceans die, then we die. So animal agriculture is the leading cause of ocean dead zones, water pollution, and species extinction. Right? If they pee and poo, what else are they going to do? They are going to burp and fart as well, like we all do, isn't it? And whenever they do that, they release greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide, which are 30 times and 300 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide. If you look at the carbon footprint of all these animals, it is more than the carbon emissions of Australia, Brazil, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Spain, and UK combined. That much how it is. If you look at the nations with the highest greenhouse gas emissions, China, USA, India. Now you imagine a country which has only livestock animals kept there, nothing else. Those animals are just standing there, they're burping and farting. This country will rank number 2 as far as greenhouse gas emissions are concerned. And what are we told? We have to save the earth, we have to go for electric vehicles, isn't it? But if you put all modes of transportation together, the cars, the trucks, the trains, the ships, the aeroplanes on one side, the emissions from the animals is still more than all these transports put together. And that is leading to global warming and climate change and all the variety of problems that we are facing because of it. And needless to say, meat and dairy foods have the maximum greenhouse emissions as compared to plant foods. So they are also responsible for air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and climate change. But picture abhi baki hai mere dost. We have not touched upon the health aspect. When COVID-19 came, what did we do? We blamed everything on China. They said they are all faulty. That is why, because of their habits, we are suffering. But if you look at all epidemics in the past, they have been linked to animal farming in some way or the other. Why? Because what we do is we crowd millions of these animals together, we raise them in filthy conditions, and we pump them with antibiotics. In fact, 80% of all antibiotics are used on factory farm animals, not in humans, with almost no accountability. And these are antibiotics that humans also require on a daily basis. Look at this, hundreds of tons of colistin, one of the topmost antibiotics, are being used in poultry in India. And that leads to formation of superbugs in these animals, what is known as antibiotic resistant bugs. And when they come into humans, they cause zoonotic diseases, which are responsible for millions of deaths every year. In fact, 75% of all emerging infectious diseases are originating in animals now. We are just waiting for the next pandemic to strike us. We are also faced with the triple burden of malnutrition, obesity, and micronutrient deficiency. This was a beautiful paper which came last year. And it said that if we continue on our current diet, then by 2050, we have millions of underweight people. There will be huge increase in obesity and global warming will be out of control. But they also said that if we change our diet, then we can eradicate malnutrition, reverse obesity rates, and control global warming. And what was this diet change? There was a strong consensus that we need to increase our consumption of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts, less consumption of ultra-processed foods, and animal source foods consumption significantly has to be reduced. Basically, we have to shift to what is known as a whole foods plant-based diet. And they recommended that this is how the graph is going for animal product intake. It's going on increasing. This is how it should come down. We have to reduce that intake. Look at the intake of vegetables and fruits. It's not going anywhere. This is how much the consumption has to increase, right? And what will happen? The global obesity, which is projected to rise like that, will start coming down. The premature mortality because of lifestyle disease that is happening now will start coming down, right? If you look at the dietary risk related deaths, you can see that all the risk factors are because of less intake of plant foods, right? And in reality, what is happening? The meat and milk demand is likely to double by 2050 because as the countries are prospering, everybody wants to ape the West. And imagine this now, right? If the meat and milk demand is doubled, instead of these 17% calories, now the world demands 34% calories from animal products. Where is the land? So much land we will require to fulfill that requirement. All forests will be destroyed. 50% of total land mass will have to be given to animal agriculture. In fact, this is happening. The meat companies are actually massacring, killing the tribes of Amazon in order to grow their animals out there, right? Indigenous tribes are being hunted by these cattle ranchers. That's a fact. And countries are now fighting for land that will lead to territory wars. So, besides all these problems, animal agriculture is also responsible for pandemics, wars, lifestyle diseases, malnutrition, and obesity. Do you see the common link now? It's not just our diet, but it's meat, fish, eggs, and milk. Well, some of you may say that this is all a Western world problem. India is, there are 29% vegetarians and it's not an issue. Well, let's see if India is any better. India is the number one dairy producer of the world. It has one third of the world's cattle. Okay. And milk production in India is just going on increasing. And if you see, as far as global emissions by species are concerned, cattle are the biggest culprits, right? If you compare dairy milk with any of the plant-based milk, say soy milk, dairy milk releases 3 times more emissions, causes 10 times more water pollution, uses 13 times more land, and uses 22 times more water. So India is unfortunately no better. If we wish to not die yet, we must save the planet and we must choose the right diet. And we may keep debating on which diet is better for an individual, but there is no debate on which diet is better for the planet, our species, our children, our survival. We have to shift to a plant based diet. But some of you may still say, is it safe? What about my proteins, calcium, vitamin B12? The answer is a big yes. When you talk of diabetes, it has been found that vegans on a plant based diet have the least incidence of diabetes. In fact, this diet lowers HbA1c, reduces the medications required. As far as cardiovascular risk is concerned, it reduces cardiovascular and all cause mortality. All autoimmune diseases are in some way related to animal proteins. They are responsible in some way to this. What about kidney disease? Animal foods are acidic in nature. Plant foods, especially the whole foods, unprocessed foods, are alkaline in nature. What about cancer? You people know more than anybody else. Processed meat is classified as class 1 carcinogen, as bad as smoking, right? Even unprocessed red meat is classified as class 2A, just one step below. That's how bad it is. And the anti-cancer foods are greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. What about COVID-19? A very interesting study showed that the odds of developing moderate to severe COVID-19 when COVID was happening was 73% less in those who were already on a plant-based diet. See the amount of protection it is offering. What about hypertension? Again, those on a plant-based diet have the least incidence. What about cholesterol? Those on plant-based diet have the least cholesterol. What about obesity? Again, the vegans have the least BMI. This randomized controlled trial, which was done, showed that a plant-based diet reduced body weight, waist circumference, BMI, HbA1c, and serum creatinine without limiting calories or even mandating exercise. All food-based dietary guidelines, number of countries are asking people to reduce the protein intake from animal foods and switch to more plant-based alternatives. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has stated that plant-based diet are nutritionally adequate, provide health benefits, they are appropriate for all stages of life, and they are more environmentally sustainable. So if we can get all the nutrition we need from a whole foods plant-based diet, then and we can do this without the damage caused by animal agriculture. This reminds me of this ad which you might be remembering.
दीपिका जी आइए आइए लीजिए आपका सब सामान तैयार
ये नहीं वो
होल फूड्स प्लांट बेस्ड डाइट,
लेकिन आप तो वो हमेशा
प्रोटीन वाली,
लेती थी
वही महंगी प्रोटीन वाली क्वालिटी, वही हेल्थ, वही टेस्ट, कम डैमेज में मिले।
तो कोई ये क्यों ले, वो न ले।
मान गए
किसे?
आपकी पारखी नजर और
प्लांट बेस्ड डाइट,
दोनों को
अब प्लांट बेस्ड डाइट,
हेल्थ का सुपर दम, डैमेज फिर भी कम।
The animal agriculture is destructive, resource intensive, unsustainable, unnecessary, and detrimental to our own health. Then why is no one speaking against it? That's the question. Well, it's all about money. The global meat industry, huge value. The global dairy industry, huge value. Milk is the largest crop in India as well. They are all going in for marketing. In the 1950s, smoking was promoted by doctors. for becoming thin. And today, only 1.2% of all advertising is promoting vegetables. Everything else is promoting meat. So governments have not ignored these issues by accident, but they have resolutely looked away. Right? So what can I do? Well, WHO has said, United Nations has said that the diet change is the single biggest way to reduce our impact on the environment, far bigger than buying an electric car or cutting down our flights. A single person in a single day by changing to a plant-based diet can save animal lives, save food, save climate, forest, water, and improve your own health. I have been for more than 6 years on a plant based diet. So, doing the math, I have saved enough water that can feed 10,000 people for a year, grains that can feed 200 people for a year, forests the size of 20 tennis courts, emissions equivalent to a car driven 140,000 kilometers, besides saving multiple animal lives and adding some health to my own life. This is the power of one person. And each one of you out there has the same power. You don't require to depend on any government policies for that. And I've had personal benefits which are quite amazing, right? I monitor my blood tests, I do a lot of tests on my own, and I found that I've been able to do things that previously I was not able to do. But let's ask the experts. There are multiple athletes who now believe in the power of plant based proteins. In fact, 60% of the foods served at the Olympics was plant based. And there were multiple award winners, medal winners during the Olympics who are plant based. But this is nothing new. This has been happening since the 1900s, where there were plant based athletes. In fact, even the Roman gladiators, it has been found, were actually eating wheat, barley, and beans, with no sign of meat or dairy products in their food. So the bodybuilders on plant-based diet. This is Patrick Bobamian. He's the world record strongman. And he was asked, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And he said, have you ever seen an ox eating meat? If these guys can do it, then why not us? For me, it's a no-brainer. We have to shift to a whole food plant-based diet. And yet, we will not want to change. Why? Because there's one organ that controls our brain as well. You know what? Our taste buds. We no longer eat to live, we now live to eat. But the question is, are we also willing to die to eat? Because literally, we are eating our way to extinction. But we don't need to. There are many plant based tasty options available. In fact, recently, a plant based cheese won prestigious dairy competition. Just that it was later disqualified, you know, because of that. Or even better, we can adapt our taste buds to healthier plant-based options. It's very easy. Taste buds just change, right? So what's it gonna be on your plate? Animal foods or plant foods? Because when we have to make a choice, we can either use our brain, okay, or we can use our heart. You have been hearing about the gut-brain axis, right? You know our brain is connected to our gut, and our heart gives rise to the feeling. Probably that is where the word gut feeling comes from. So I want to ask you, what is your gut feeling? 900,000 cows are slaughtered every single day. Again, a big number. If you line up these cows, 900,000 cows lined up one behind the other, that line will extend all the way from Mumbai to Kolkata, slaughtered every day. 130,000 goats slaughtered every hour. 160,000 pigs slaughtered every hour. 140,000 chicken slaughtered every minute, and 100,000 fish slaughtered every second. That's how bad it is. What is your gut feeling? Are you okay? Are you comfortable hearing all these numbers? Yet, no one bats an eye. Why? Because a single death is a tragedy, but a million deaths is just a statistic. What about 100 billion deaths that are happening? Well, some say, what is wrong in killing an animal that has already lived its life? Well, the normal lifespan of a chicken, you know how much it is? 8 to 10 years. But that chicken that is eaten, okay, you know what is the age when it's killed? Just 45 days. All these, chicken that you're seeing being carried away, these are babies who can't even lift their own weight. And if you look at all animals that are eaten, their natural lifespan compared to their slaughter age, you will realize we are basically eating babies. What about the egg industry? The egg industry has no role for male chicks, right? They are not going to grow up and lay eggs. So when they are 1 day old, they are sorted male, female, male, female. They are put on a conveyor belt and they are thrown into the grinder. That is the fate. 700,000 male chicks are killed every hour on this planet. What is your gut feeling? What about the dairy industry? Let me ask you a simple question. Who gives milk? People say cow, buffalo. No, a mother gives milk. That's the truth. The definition of milk is a fluid secreted by female mammals for the nourishment of their young. Right? Every mother gives milk after giving birth to a baby. It's that simple. Right? A cow also doesn't give milk all her life. She'll give milk only after she gives birth to a calf. So the same natural laws should also apply to cows. But what do? We separate the calf from its mother. And what is worse, what are we made to believe that the entire human species is dependent on that cow's milk for our survival? See this. The surest sign that intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe is that they have never tried to contact us. Because humans are so weird. We do all kinds of weird things, right? But there's nothing to beat. Our most unnatural creation is drinking milk. We are the only mammals on this planet that drink milk as adults, and that too of another species. See how weird this is. It's possible to survive on milk. That narrative has been changed to it is impossible to survive without milk. And the only ones who really need cow's milk are baby calves. So unless I look something like this to you, it's not my milk. I'm not my mom, then it's not my milk. And this is in spite of the fact that 65 to 75% of Indians are lactose intolerant. So dairy is really not needed. But some say at least there's no killing in dairy. Well, let's see. India is the number two beef exporter in the world without having any dedicated beef farms. So, where does all this cattle for export come from? It's very simple. India's beef comes from the dairy industry. If you support the dairy industry, you are supporting the beef industry. And instead of stopping, we are promoting dairy industry. Rampant artificial insemination, injecting oxytocin, separation of calves from the mother, purposeless slaughtering of male calves, because again, males have no role in the dairy industry. But we are in denial. We say, oh, all these things don't happen, stuff like that. But look at the statistics. Male female distribution in India for cows, normally should be 1:1. It's 1:3 and going worse. Now, cows, remember, are protected in many states in India. What about buffaloes? No protection, 1:11. One male for 11 females. What does that tell you? If you look at the life cycle of a female in the dairy industry, this is all she does. She's impregnated, a calf is born, the calf is taken away. Again, re-impregnated, calf is born, calf is taken away. Just goes on. Imagine the physical and mental trauma of giving childbirth and having your child separated from you. It's unthinkable. And whenever the milk production is reduced or stopped, the cow is sent or the buffalo is sent for slaughter. And in towns where it is not allowed for slaughter, it is left for pen for herself. And you see all these abandoned cows after exploitation roaming around the streets. You will never see a buffalo there because buffaloes can be sold to make money. And then the irony, biggest irony, we worship these cows. Nobody will see that rope that has been tied on the face of that cow. So in the dairy industry, males are killed, females are first exploited, and then they are killed. That's the fact. What is your gut feeling after all this? And these are animals that we love. It's not that we have anything against them. We love them, we care for them, we connect with them. But these same animals, when they come on our plate with different names, we just don't care because it's the taste that prevents us from seeing the pain of our fellow creatures. If you look at these two, I mean, what's the difference? I don't see any difference. They are both live, sentient beings. Yet, we have been brainwashed into believing that one can be eaten, no problem. The other has to be petted. You can't eat that. Why? The difference is only in our perception. But why do we have such a perception? Listen to
The
this.
cows give us milk, the cows give us milk. Hi ho the dairy, oh, the cows give us milk. The hens give us eggs, the hens give us eggs. Hi ho the dairy, oh, the hens give us eggs. The sheep give us wool, the sheep give us wool. Hi ho the dairy, oh, the sheep give us wool. The horses carry loads, the horses carry loads. Hi ho the dairy, oh, the horses carry loads.
Yeah, so all of us have grown up listening to such lovely nursery rhymes, isn't it? Beautiful, nice, bright pictures, happy animals. But is that the reality? This is the reality. This is how our eggs, wool, milk come from. This is how the animals are made to suffer. Nobody is going to show you this. They're going to show you happy faces. What is your gut feeling? Look at this pork being sold, meat being sold. Look at the happy animals. They're like, come, come, eat me, please. Look at this. Come, take my eggs. Come, take my legs. And if nothing works, they label it happy cow. So there's no left room left for any doubt. They're just putting it onto you that these are all happy animals out there waiting for you to come and exploit them. But please, we have to look beyond what we see, right? Because we always have a choice. Each one of you has a choice. Would you rather hug them or hang them? Would you rather tickle them or torture them? Would you rather snuggle them or slaughter them? And would you rather kiss them or kill them? What is your gut feeling? Trust your gut, everybody says. If you feel something is wrong, it usually is. The only thing we need from animals is forgiveness for all that we are doing to them. We have other food, they don't have another life. We have other food, we don't have another planet. The climate change is hitting us hard. 1.5 degrees above the industrialization levels is our danger mark. And above 2 degrees means it is irreversible. We have already touched 1.5. Every year is being the hottest from the previous, hottest in the last 100,000 years. The glaciers are melting, Arctic Ocean is disappearing. The sea levels are rising. There are islands which have gone underwater. Egypt was facing a staggering building collapse because of the water. By 2050, millions will find them in flood zones, including in Mumbai and Kolkata. We are running out of time. Animal agriculture, besides causing all these problems, also leads to needless suffering. So ask yourself, does your heart agree with a diet that depends on so much cruelty? Does your brain agree with a diet that is causing our own extinction? What is your gut feeling about this? Or would you let your tongue decide everything for you? We are what we eat. So let us eat the rainbow, not the more. Choose wisely because our plate will decide our fate. Let us choose a diet that won't let us die yet. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for an amazing session. If someone has a question, you can type it in the chat window or you can ask directly.
That was really mind-boggling. Very difficult to, what shall I say, incorporate so many changes that we would like to do when we are aware. So, like you said, adaptation and changing our perception about certain things is very, very important. Even as vegetarians, hardcore vegetarians, consumption of milk, you know, changing to a plant-based milk instead of dairy is going to be very difficult. But when we think about the larger picture and the damage that it is doing, we as individuals can choose to make this change. But in your opinion, Dr. Sharang, what do you think about the overall impact? How is that going to change? Because like you rightly said, there's so much of commercial slant to this whole thing. People will say we'll go out of business, we'll go out of employment, the economy will be disrupted. How are we going to, handle those things?
So, firstly, see, people said the same thing about the tobacco industry when it happened. So many people will become jobless and things like. The fact is, if you look at the data which is presented by the Indian Agricultural, they every year they give a census and they give out numbers. You realize that the dairy industry is being tremendously supported by funds from the government, and not only in India, it is across the globe. It is not a profit-making venture. multiple taxpayers' money is being pumped into this to support the dairy industry. They are given free land, they are given free cattle sometimes because they cannot make enough money from their cattle, right? Majority of the poor farmers are actually in losses. If you go out and talk to don't go to the the top bosses of the Amul and all these dairy industries. They are making money, but on grounds when you look at it, they are suffering. And it's not going to happen that overnight everybody is going to go plant based, right? It is going to be a gradual shift. So the more and more we start demanding plant foods, the same way the agriculture industry will also shift. More and more now millets are being promoted. So more and more people will go and start growing millets. That is where the market, whatever is the demand, that will be fulfilled. Right now, the demand is for dairy. So everybody is going into dairy. The moment the demand starts shifting, the whole industry will start shifting. And it is happening. The plant-based market is now booming, right? It's coming up in a big way. So all these things are going to happen slowly and gradually. So it's not like somebody is going to suddenly go out of job. No, they will get different opportunities to look at other things.
And also people like who eat non-vegetarian quite frequently, probably instead of completely going off overnight into a plant-based diet, they can ensure, like in the olden times, they do it once a week or twice a week,
Yeah,
reduce
absolutely. See,
yeah.
if you can change overnight, well and good. For me, it was simple. I used to eat non-veg, I used to consume dairy, eggs, everything. I could shift overnight. Not everybody can. I understand that. It is our taste, it is the addiction that is keeping us hooked onto it. We may give hundreds of different reasons. The final reason is we don't want to give up the taste that we have developed for these products. That's the fact of life, right? And slowly but steadily, it can happen. Yes, of course, like you said, for health perspective, a predominantly plant-based diet is what is required. Even earlier, not too far, even the dairy industry, which has boomed so much, has been thanks to the Britishers. They required milk to be sent to UK, and they are the ones who bought these daily conglomerates. They started doing that, and then of course we had the Revolution that also further escalated the whole thing. Otherwise, just 200 years back, Indians also were not consuming so much of dairy as we are now. Right now, it is just gone, over the top.
So I
Yes,
think
there are
we
a
have
couple
a
of
few
questions in the chat window.
Yeah. Yes.
Doctor, what about probiotics? Generally sold as only form from curd. What are the alternatives?
So, firstly, probiotics are what? These are good bacteria, right? Good bacteria are required in our gut. You have already had two lectures, and a lot of us said about that. So, when you eat curds, okay, there are a few good bacteria in it. When you consume those, you get those bacteria replenished. But if you remember the earlier talks, we have billions of bacteria in our body. We don't even know 1% of those bacteria, right? And instead of consuming probiotics, what we need to consume is prebiotics. Prebiotics is basically fiber, which is present only in plant foods. So when you consume prebiotics, the good bacteria which are already present in your gut will start flourishing automatically. So it is not that we necessarily need to have probiotics. Yes, if you are having suffering from some infection and you have taken some antibiotics, then there is a sudden drop in the number of those bacteria. At that time, you may take some probiotics to replenish them. But to sustain them, you don't need to keep taking those. They're already in your gut. You only need to give them the food that they wish for, and which is fiber. Right? So when you do that, even if you want to take probiotics, you don't have to take dairy curd. You can always take soy curd. You can take peanut curd. It's the curd, it's the probiotic is present in any kind of curd. You can take fermented foods, you know. So all these, there are a lot of options which are available.
Thank you.
Idli dosa is also this fermented only, right?
Yeah. So what about genetically modified food?
So when we talk of soy, there is a GMO soy which is available, and that has given soy a bad name because many people think it is all genetically modified. But the fact is that 80% of all soy that is grown on this planet is fed to animals. And that soy, which is grown especially in the Western countries, is all GMO. Luckily, in India, so far, GMO food has not yet come. GMO soy has not yet come. So when you buy soy from India, it will always be non-GMO. It will be written also non-GMO. So we just have to avoid consuming GMO foods. It's not good. But the reason why it has come onto this planet is because we want to feed the animals, not for our consumption.
When I tell my children about the vegan superstar, they say they're on supplements.
So, which vegan superstar we are talking of? So, what happens is if you are comparing somebody like Novak Djokovic, if you're comparing somebody like Virat Kohli, you're comparing some like Sunil Chetri, all these people, okay, the level of activity that they're doing is over the top, right? You and I are not going to go to that level. If a child wants to do it, it's a different story. At that age, these supplements are not necessary. After a certain while, you may need supplements. It is not necessary. Again, I'm saying because ICMR guidelines are very clear about it. Even athletes do not need to consume protein supplements. A whole food plant-based diet will give adequate amount of proteins as well. And maybe sometime I can give a talk on proteins itself exclusively and elaborate this in more details. Having said that, the two things that supplements are required for is vitamin B12 and vitamin D3. Both have a specific reason for that. And I don't know if you have the time to get into it, but D3, we know we are sitting indoors, we are not exposed to the sun enough. And that is why, unfortunately, we are having deficiency. B12 deficiency, many people think is only in vegetarians or in vegans. That's not the case. 47% of Indians are B12 deficient. So even non-vegetarians are B12 deficient. That is because the soil has degraded. Please understand, B12 is not made by animals, neither it's made by plants, it's made by bacteria in the soil. And because of the soil degradation, because of the pesticides that we are using, even animals are given supplements of B12 and D3 and even protein supplements so that they get the requirements and then we are eating those animals for those supplements. Instead, we can directly take the supplements. So if required, there is nothing wrong in taking supplements, but again, it's not necessary. You can do your tests, B12 levels, D3, see how low they are if they are low, and then you can consume them.
Okay, so which B12 supplement do you recommend?
So first, I would recommend get your B12 levels checked. See what they are. What I do is I take fortified food like nutritional yeast. There's a nutritional yeast which is available, which has already some B12 added to it. So I take that. I love it. It's got a little bit of cheesy flavor. It's healthy. It has got proteins as well as B12. So that is good. But if you want to take supplements, you have methylcobalamin, cyanocobalamin, doesn't matter. Whichever is available, you can take. The dosage is different. You get from 5 milligrams to 1500, 1.5 milligrams, that is, you can get. You don't need to take that high because the higher dose you take, the absorption is reduced. There's a limit as to how much of absorption can occur. We require 2.4 micrograms per day. Okay, that's a very small amount that we need. So maybe once a week or something you can supplement based on your B12 levels. Also, our liver has a huge store. That store can last for 3 to 5 years. So if you have taken enough supplements, that store is replenished. You don't have to constantly keep worrying about your B12 levels.
Okay, sir. If animals need more antibiotics than human, then turnover of veterinary pharma industry should be more than human pharma industry. So I doubt whether is that so.
No, so I have given references to everything that I have said. You can go and check. The fact is, veterinary people do not treat the livestock animals. Please understand, these antibiotics are not given to treat diseased animals. They are given as prophylaxis. Now imagine you have like 1,000 animals, okay, on your farm. One animal has some disease. Mastitis in the dairy animals is very common. It is the infection of the udder which occurs. You cannot go and treat every single animal. You cannot call a vet to treat every single animal every time there is a problem. So what is done? These antibiotics are injected as prophylaxis so that the risk of infection is reduced. So these are untrained people who just procure these antibiotics and go on injecting to these animals without any control over this. And that is why so much of antibiotics are used. The second thing is many of these antibiotics also help in growth. They act like growth hormones. So, in order to rapidly increase the size of these animals for faster turnover and more profits, again antibiotics are used. So it's not like they're going to a vet and the vet is prescribing these antibiotics. No, these antibiotics are directly given to all these animals.
So how can we switch to plant-based diet considering the cost, practicality, and ease or use procurement? For example, oat milk is expensive, not available all the time, and is processed and is packed in a Tetra Pak. Are there any simple tips to fix this?
Yeah. So firstly, if you see what I spoke about dairy, the concept of milk itself is flawed. We do not need to consume milk. We are not babies, certainly not calves. Okay, we are not even babies. So, why do you want to have oat milk? You have oats. Why do you want to have soy milk? You can have soy. The problem is that we are addicted to dairy milk, and hence we are looking and searching for replacements for that dairy milk, which will try and taste the same, and we are trying to adjust. Fair enough. Till the time you adjust your taste buds, you may opt for one of these milks. Now, the reason why they are expensive is because the demand is less. As the demand grows up, the cost will also start coming down. You don't have to buy from outside. Soy milk can be made at home and it will cost you 10 to 15 rupees per liter. Trust me. Yes, it's an elaborate process. You may not be able to do it regularly, in which case I recommend there are these nut makers, nut milk makers, which are available online. You just buy them. All you have to do is put a handful of nuts. You can put soybeans, you can put almonds, you can put oat, whatever you want to put water. In 20 minutes, you will get fresh plant-based milk right there. Hot, warm, fresh plant-based milk. That is what I do on a daily basis.
Thank you.
In fact, by the way, this is an important point. Plant-based food being expensive is a huge myth. Because what happens is, again, we are looking at replacement for milk, replacement for cheese, replacement for something else. And then when you go to these restaurants, they're charging double the price because the market is less. You don't have to look for replacement. What are you eating? Dal, chawal, sabji, roti. That is your plant-based meal. It is the cheapest of the entire types of foods that is available. In fact, nobody is promoting because nobody has any money to make out of it. That's why it's not being promoted. Anything where there is money, people will start promoting.
So coming to dal chawal, when they say include dal and pulses for protein, they say it's loaded with carbs. So the question was connected to that. A huge discussion on protein, that is dals have protein, but heavy on carb. Also, there are many protein powders out there. Do you recommend any such protein powder? Should they be consuming it on a daily basis?
Yeah, so again, carbs have unnecessarily got a bad name, right? The problem is with refined carbs, which is what we are consuming these days. These are all refined carbs that we are consuming and creating problems. Whole grain carbs and carbs that come from veggies and fruits, these do not have a problem. These are starchy, they have fiber in them, which is good for our health. It helps in reducing the absorption, helps in gut. I mean, your two lectures have already gone over it. So it's not a problem at all, right? The problem comes because this carb fear has been created in our minds, which is not right. If you look across the population with the longest healthy living, the blue zones, you will see that the carb intake is as much as 70 to 80%. The calories are coming from carbs, not so much from proteins. Okay. And unfortunately, it's too small a time to explain why and how what I'm saying is true. It will require a lot of things, and maybe in the future I can give a proper talk and I can explain the whole concept of proteins and why we are so running after proteins. Coming to supplements, again, it is not necessary. Okay, all dietary guidelines are saying that if okay, there's a big if you consume whole foods, if you consume processed foods, you will not meet your dietary IDA for proteins. Correct, but you have to eat whole foods. And there's a dietary plate which you have to follow. 50% has to come from fruits, vegetables, and salads. Okay. Only 25% has to come from cereals. The problem that India is facing currently is that 65% of our proteins are coming from cereals. Okay, when only 25% is supposed to come. What we do is we have two, three chapatis or a huge rice and little sabji, little dal, like achar, we are having that. No, it has to change. You have to have more of veggies. You have to have more of dal, not the patla dal, thick solid dal. You have to have salads and you have to have just a limited amount of uh, grains. Okay, we are over consuming grains. That's the problem.
So
And
when the
carbs,
animal,
sorry, carbs, mind you, are present in veggies and dal and everything as well. So I'm asking you to reduce rice and roti, not because it has got carbs, but because we are exceeding the requirement, the necessary things.
so we spoke about antibiotics being fed to animals. So aren't these antibiotics or superbugs destroyed during cooking?
No, this is not about cooking. What I'm trying to say is when you have an animal who has been injected multiple antibiotics, that animal, there will be that one mutation of a bacteria, suppose, which will be resistant to those antibiotics. So all the other bacteria will get killed, only that bacteria will start multiplying. Now, from that animal, there's just next to it another animal. Okay, they are all staying together in filthy conditions. That bug will get transmitted. Then in that animal, it will flourish because that animal is also receiving the same antibiotics to which it is resistant. And as a result, the entire bacteria will spread across, right? And then when we consume food, some of these, luckily only some of these, whatever, suppose an infection which is occurring in an animal doesn't necessarily cause an infection in humans. If that were the case, we would have been wiped out by now. Only some of these bugs start infecting humans also. And that is when we suffer from these problems.
So if you're okay, I'll take up the last question, sir.
Sure.
What about ghee? Substitute for ghee. Ghee is a superfood in many alternative medicines and a staple daily food. How not to include ghee in daily food because we are so trained to include them daily?
So, I mean, I'm not an Ayurveda specialist, but I have spoken with one Ayurveda specialist, Dr. Nitin Kochar. He has made wonderful videos also explaining, and he has quoted text from Ayurveda where the process of acquiring milk is elaborately laid out. Okay. And there are certain guidelines which have to be followed. Only that milk is considered to be good. The first criteria is you should milk a cow if the calf is more than 1 year old, older than 1 year. We don't do that. The moment the calf is born, we start milking the cow. Second, the cow should have plenty of access to natural light, which is not happening. The cow has to graze on free lands, which is not happening. The cow needs, I mean, obviously, she should not have been injected with hormones and injected with antibiotics. And this milk, when taken in the evening and consumed in a warm format immediately without delaying, that milk in Ayurveda is considered to be good. Now imagine, where are we getting this kind of milk? That was possible in those times because each house had their own cow, right? This is not the situation today. So anything coming out of bad milk, in fact, that milk which is existing today is known as dushit milk. And if you take that milk and then you process to make it ghee, it is not going to give you any benefits. And that ghee in those times also had medicinal effects. Today, we are not taking it as medicine, we are taking it as food. It is high in saturated fats. And while there is a lot of debate about saturated fats, the verdict is very clear that the lesser the saturated fats you take, the better it is for your heart. All organizations have said that. So I would not recommend ghee. I would not even recommend processed oils. Okay, these are also not good. There is something called as oil-free cooking as well, which you can learn. But if you have to take very less amount of seed oils. very less amount. You don't have to take those because that is also processed. The lesser you process foods, the better it is for you.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions patiently. It was a wonderful talk where, we were taken back thinking, what are we doing to our universe? Are we trying to be too greedy? Are we so self-centered and selfish that we are not able to think beyond our need, how it is coming, what's the processing that's being done? And also, every science talks about one thing, that is Jita Indriya or the Jita Atma, where we can overcome our palatable issue. It should not stop at the level of the taste or the perception or some prejudice that we have from ages. It's one earth that we have no alternate, and it's not just for us, for the upcoming generations. It was an awesome thought-provoking session from you, sir. As you mentioned, definitely we would love to hear more about protein, because how much ever everyone talks about, it's a big debatable and enjoyable conversation. Like protein and the supplements, probably it's never ending. Thank you so much for your expertise and time, everyone. So we'll see you with some nice, interesting topic next month. Till then, please take care of your health. Thank you all for your presence and participation. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you everyone for being there. Thank you
you.
so much for inviting me.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye.